It was a time when seas of plastic swallowed metal miniatures, a time of the return of narrative gaming, an age undreamed of, a golden age of wargames. I will be the chronicler of this saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure. Hello, adventurers. Welcome to the 5th episode of the show. I'd like to thank everybody that's supported the show as I've shared my hobby journey over the past 4 episodes. It's great to see my journey resonating with so many people who've had similar journeys from around the globe. Your support's been invaluable, so I really appreciate it. This time we're going to travel to a galaxy far, far away and talk about the game Star Wars Legion, as I'm joined for the first time by a guest host, my buddy Chris. He's a great guy. He's one of my best friends. I have so much fun gaming with this guy. As well as talk about Star Wars Legion, we had a great conversation when we were gaming about some game theory as we extrapolate our opinions on game simulation versus game abstraction. When does abstraction become too much in a game? Then we'll share a bit about our adventure playing Star Wars Legion and how this conversation about simulation versus abstraction applies to Star Wars Legion, the game itself. A game which we had a lot of fun playing, so no matter what we say following this, don't doubt for 2 seconds that we did not have an absolute blast playing this game. So here in just a second, we're going to jump into Chris introducing himself, about how he got into the hobby, and we're just going to jump into the meat of the show. Thanks again for going on this adventure with us.
Thanks, Jim, for having me on your show. It's super awesome, and it's been a really, really fantastic first 4 episodes, and I hope this one's fantastic too. A little background on myself. I'm 47 now. I think we're near the same age and kind of grew up in the same era playing games. And really what happened was, as a teenager in high school, stopping by the local game store, because I'd always played Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger, I was able to start looking at the Games Workshop miniatures on the wall. They were super fascinating, and the world of Warhammer 40K was super fascinating. And I had my best friend in the whole world, Danny. His dad was a gamer from the days of historical gaming and lead miniatures. And one day when I was 16, he invited me over to his house and said, my dad's going to play a game. Let's go all play. And I went over there, and it was a table. It was probably 10 by 5 foot, completely filled with hundreds, if not 1,000 or more, miniatures that were humans and elves and dwarves versus the forces of chaos. And I believe this is probably 2nd or 3rd edition Warhammer. This is 1989 probably. And we played this game all day long, and it was the most amazing thing that I had ever played in my life. I knew at that moment I wanted to do this as a hobby. Of course, there's a ton of fire trucks zooming by my house right now.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. I wanted to do this. This was the hobby that I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to paint them. I wanted to own them. And more importantly, while I was playing with his dad, Ed, looking across the table, I said, here's a guy who's 45 years old, and when I'm 45, I want to be that guy. I want to be that cool guy who has these armies and is introducing kids to the game. And
right.
As it turns out, my whole life went by, and I am that guy. I am that 40-something-year-old dad who is introducing kids to the game and playing with my friends. And I couldn't have asked for more in terms of how that aspect of my life went, and that was really great.
Right, that's fantastic. Yeah, so very similar backgrounds, other than I had a dad that did it. I mean, that's
right.
Really, the main difference there. Because
Right.
we've ridden most of the same years gaming.
Yeah, and you guys were out ahead of me, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous of a lot of the stories that you have to tell, and a lot of the amount of gaming that you got in. That was super exciting. For me, I am a painter first and a gamer second, and definitely a competitive gamer third. I don't really find winning or competing to be fun. I find telling a story through painted miniatures to be fun, and I find telling a story through what the battle is about to be fun. So I do a lot of painting, and when I get in games, they're always good games, and they're good with friends.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're definitely on the same page there, but we knew that, but let's extrapolate that for the listeners. I'm the same way.
Yep.
I would much rather tell a great story, and winning is like a tertiary thing. If I win, I win.
Right.
That's
easy for you to say, since you won our last game.
Since I won our last game, yeah. But that was down to the wire. We really that could have went either way.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was a great Darth Vader fight.
Yeah, that was a great back and forth, right, nail biting to the end kind of game.
Yeah, and that game did change my opinion of Star Wars Legion. I was on the fence, and I just needed a game where I knew the rules well enough, and I had a narrative play and time to play to change my mind. And overall, I have a positive view of the game now.
Right. Yeah, I was shocked that you were a bit down on it at first, and I'm glad that your experience gaming with me helped you see the things that you weren't seeing before.
Right. And I saw a lot of other stuff too. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight when we have time, the simulation versus abstraction, which is kind of how I've come to define what you and I used to game these days, where we're talking about these huge games with our fathers and our friends, and what I kind of perceive gaming as now. And as a disclaimer, everything I say is an opinion. Yeah.
We are all about opinions here. So, there's going to be plenty of opinions. It's not necessarily, the law of the land fact, but, we had some good conversations about this topic, just while you and I were sitting actually playing the game this last weekend.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, we did have the good game. We did have a good game. Yes, in the end, I did pull it off by 2 points or 1 point?
1 point. If I had killed Princess Leia, I could have flipped it for 1 point in my favor.
Yeah. So it was literally down to that last die roll. Yeah, that's fantastic. A good game. That's a good game.
That's, in fact, I think I recently read the Britt Priestley and I think it's John Lambshead co-wrote the book on miniatures gaming, and they say the absolute penultimate game is one that ends so evenly that there's a dice roll at the end, and then it's just this huge, the story comes to an end with this chance for everyone to win, and that's exactly what our game was.
Right, exactly. And everybody, I do apologize. I do have some sniffling and coughing still. I'm on the back end of a pretty nasty cold, so I apologize in advance. There will probably be a few more throat clearings and all the rest. I'll try to edit them out as much as possible, but there may be some left in. But yeah, that was such a fantastic game. It's been a long time. This was the first time in a while that I've got to play a game where my setup was perfect this time, though. Because we sat down and we played. We didn't have to stand on our feet all day. We just literally, the way the game rolled, the way we were set up, it was perfect. I had so much fun just shooting the breeze and playing this great game with you last weekend. Thank you so much for coming up and and then for coming on to talk about our experiences playing this game.
Absolutely.
But it was such a fun time. I haven't had that much relaxed, casual gameplay fun, because a lot of times I have multiple. I have a bunch of you guys over, so it's not quite so one-on-one and so overly casual. When I'm having to entertain 5 or 6 other people, it's just not quite as casual, even though we're playing very casual.
Right.
It's not as casual. I had so much fun this past weekend. So again, thanks for coming up, man. I had a total blast.
Not a problem at all. What we were talking about, where we were chatting during the game and having fun, that's actually part of what I want to talk to everyone tonight about. Is the is kind of like the camaraderie, and what it means to be a new gamer and game in a situation where games are being designed to be played fast because you're not talking to the person you're playing with and you're playing at a game store, say, as opposed to going to your buddy's house. We call it Garage Hammer, but it's just generally going to a friend's house where you can just sit down, relax, and let people take half their turn over again because they made a mistake. And that's what you're doing.
That's completely what we did. Let's be honest. That game could have been over in 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
But
and
we
I
played
think
for what, 5, 6?
yeah, oh yeah, no, I think it was at least 5 hours, and that game is meant to be played with our heads down, rolling dice, and just doing the game, and that's where they say 800 points is an hour and a half game. Impossible for that to be an hour and a half unless we were both silent, rolling dice and doing nothing else. And I think that in like when that's going on, it means that we're not friends. And I think that game is made to be a competitive game for strangers. And
right, and
I'll
they
go
have no
into
problem
that.
saying that. They have no problem.
No,
saying
not
that.
at all. Yeah, it is
The game is
presented
meant to
that
be
way.
competitive. That is
Yeah.
what they're doing. That is their main focus. They want to keep it balanced for competitive play.
Right.
So people like us that just love the narrative story of Star Wars have to extrapolate.
Right.
And we'll discuss some of that later too.
Sure.
But yeah, you're right. The game is it is written to be a competitive game. Put your heads down and play for 2 hours. Measure your moves and just make them and go forward.
Yep.
Roll those dice.
Yep. And you better have a force that's going to face roll the other guy. And this game definitely, like a lot of Fantasy Flight games, has meta involved and a lot of people playing. And the more people that play online, the more meta is going to be available online. And you're going to have people show up to, for instance, X-Wing with 2 YT 1300s. And, it's a Twinkie force. It sucks. It's not fun to play against, and you're going to win. But some people have their fun by beating other people up. And
that is the complete fun of a lot of people. They just enjoy the winning part.
Right.
And I'm just not wired that way.
Right. I'm not going to begrudge them. The guy that I had at my store who won the X-Wing tournament overall for a 6-week tournament, he was a great guy. He was a really nice guy. He was very polite, and he brought this twink force that just steamrolled everybody. Right. And he had fun, and he was a very gracious winner. So what we want to do is, I don't want to be picking out competitive gamers. It's not competitive versus narrative here, but we're going to be talking about like our experiences growing up and playing narratively and how now we view that, and hopefully kind of finding a common ground for newer players who don't know that you can play that way.
Right. Because there's not a lot of people guiding them to the more narrative play. I do have to give Games Workshop props for, in the past 4 or 5 years, starting to push a narrative edge to gaming. Right. I do have to give them props for that, because for so long they were just build your list and play, play in tournaments, play competitively.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of nice that they've taken this turn and have pushed a little more of that narrative play. Right.
And alternatively, you want to think that look at having to tell people to play that way might have, that might tell you something about how competitive the scene is right now. Now, we have a lot of friends who might even be listening to this, who are really smart guys. We have a lot of friends who are teachers, actually, who will probably listen to this, really smart guys, and they're really good gamers, and they're narrative gamers. And Brian, in particular, pops into my mind, somebody who would probably respond to everything I'm saying with a picture of Clint Eastwood being angry, because, it's all talk, and a lot of people will probably consider this just all talk, but I think it has merit. And when we go into it, we'll kind of discuss from the ground up, like the differences and maybe how to balance them.
Right. Ways you can do it yourself. Exactly.
Right.
Well, why don't you get us started on this discussion, and then we'll talk more near the end about Star Wars Legion and how what we're going to discuss is going to, would apply to Star Wars Legion itself. Then we'll talk about our game at the very, very end.
Sure. Well, I had this idea that there's simulation and abstraction, and that miniature war games are simulations. Their miniatures are meant to be simulations, and anybody who thinks differently isn't thinking too hard about it, I think. If you look at a miniature, it's wearing a web belt and it's got grenades on it, and we play WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, and you have, a weapon, and if it didn't matter, then I could play with a pony who had, a magic bowling ball, and I could call it a Space Marine, but it does matter because we want it to be a Space Marine. That's a simulation. So if we're going to have a simulation of a miniature, then we are going to call this a simulation. And of course, we can't have a real simulation because reality is walking across the street and trying not to get hit by a car, and you have to play it in real time, and there's actually a chance of dying. So there's got to be abstraction.
Right. And there's always abstraction.
Right. Right. And so, you know, what's the balance? How do we define abstraction, simulation? And kind of what it's going to get to at the end is how abstract or simulation based I think Star Wars is. And that's the whole, us playing it was the whole thing that started it up. How's it different than what we used to play? Why do we play though? We play miniatures games because we like painting. That's my start. If I never painted a single miniature, I probably wouldn't play miniatures games. And if I didn't have a game to play, I probably wouldn't paint miniatures. It's the two together. Another reason we game is to win. We've already talked about the winner. Another reason, and this is a little bit of everybody's reason, is theme. And Star Wars is so heavy in theme.
Oh, yeah, completely.
I want to play Star Wars. I want to play Darth Vader, and you want to play Luke Skywalker, and we got to do that. Theme was super heavy in this game. And the last that I can think of right off the top of my head is experience the simulation. We want to pretend we're there. You know, we want to think and feel how it would have been to be there. And that's why so many people are fascinated, I think, in historical combat. And so many people watch sci-fi and want to play sci-fi stuff. It's fascinating to be in those worlds.
Oh yeah, totally. Being able to immerse yourself into the game world that you're playing, and that's, to me, that's the whole point.
Right.
You know, that's that is the encompassment. Yes, I like painting. Yes, I love gaming, but I want to feel myself get immersed in that game. That's why I play painting miniatures.
Yeah, I want to relate. Right.
Yeah, that's why I've recommitted myself. You know, we've got to play painting miniatures. You've got to do it. It just makes the game. It helps that immersion. You know, it helps you get immersed in the game.
Right. And so, in the beginning, and when I say in the beginning, I kind of want to think of not quite as far back as Small Wars, you know, with tin soldiers and shooting cannon. In the beginning, I want to think of like 1980s historical gaming, where people were producing quantities of historicals, Napoleonics, for instance, also ancients, and you were playing big battles. Right off the top of my head, besides early Warhammer historical, or maybe DBM, I don't know any of systems, but what were they playing in the 80s to play historicals?
You were playing a lot of WRG Ancients. For Civil War back then, we were playing Stars and Bars. I can't remember. There were a couple of different World War II sets out there. I mean, there are just a lot of different games.
Right.
Back then, the games were so crunchy, so involved. Some of them, one of the World War II games that we played, that I first played with my dad, we were tracking grenades and you know, magazines and rifle clips, and man, it was some crazy stuff. Now, granted, you weren't playing with very many miniatures,
right?
But I mean, you were tracking all this stuff. If you had an anti-tank gun, you know, you might have had, you know, 4 HE rounds, and you know, everything else might have been, you know, anti-tank rounds.
Right.
You know?
My friend Bob, who has written his own miniatures game, Brink of Battle, he calls it Biscuits and Bullets, where it's a point of granularity where you're counting clips and you're counting rations, and as I kind of like jokingly say, are your shoes tight or not?
Right.
And the more simulation, the more likely you are to have to find out, did anybody make a mistake and drink last night instead of getting a good night's sleep before the battle?
Right.
And then, of course, you know, we don't all want to do that. And sometimes those are in the rules. And what happens is, after years and years, say in the 70s, we start chit-based games, right? And there's this amazing granularity there. And it goes to miniatures and miniatures. There's less granularity. And that's because, in part, you can't have grand armies. You really do have a couple hundred miniatures, because cost is a point and time to paint is a point.
Right.
So you start playing these counts as armies. Here's a block of 25 guys. It's probably actually a block of 5,000.
Right. And actually, I think most Ancients gaming was that through, you know, has been that way throughout all time.
Right.
Because, you can't put a whole legion of legionaries on the table, a whole cohort,
right,
or you would have nothing but a cohort on the table.
Yeah, and likewise, if you really wanted to count 1-to-1, what are the chances that you have a 50-man legionnaire run into a 100-man Germanic, with a little bit of peltists and a little bit of like berserkers, and it just doesn't make any sense, I mean, so you've got to have the abstraction, and that's a great way to abstract a game. So as the games went on, those abstractions kept going, and now we really have to look at how many people were playing miniatures games in the 80s. Not a lot. Let's call it not a lot. That's the amount. And the amount that people are playing now is a huge amount in comparison.
I would say it's just it's exploded.
Exploded, right. And part of what made it explode, I think, is that we made it more abstract. And the reason being because a new player is sitting there and watching two older players play in the late 1980s, may kind of be overwhelmed unless you're passionate about it and you don't even know yet, like I was. You may look at it and go, well, that's great, but man, these guys are writing down spell effects and like individual people and units are under certain effects and have lost certain amounts of wounds, and there's this granularity, and then these old guys are playing and they're having a great time, but someone out there is making these games to sell and they're making a living and the sales need to be higher, and they start saying, you know what? A lot of people have told me they don't want to play my game because we're counting biscuits and it's just a little bit too, it's a little bit too hard to follow. What if I cut out all the biscuit counting and the shoe tying and make it just a little bit more streamlined? And then, hey, I've been playing that game. A second edition came out. It's more streamlined. You want to try it now? Sure. And that's how slowly over the years you have new editions coming out and new rules writing philosophy that is causing newer players to come in. And for sales, that's great because you want more people to play the game. You want to sell more. And I don't begrudge anybody that.
Right. More people cycle through, the easier it is to, and enter into it.
Right. And the more people that come into it, the more vocal you get people saying, I would play, but this reason. And when you're listening to people say, I'm not purchasing your product because of this, you change things. And I think you and I probably agree to a point. That's what caused 3rd edition Warhammer 40K to happen. And I mean, coming from a 2nd edition schooling, I had huge armies and I had been playing 40K and it was amazing. I had such a great time in the 90s. And 3rd edition came out and I read the rule book and I set it down and I never played again.
Yeah, I honestly had put down 3rd edition 40K till just before I went to work at Games Workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In fact, that's the only thing that made me pick it back up and play it all.
Right. Oh, we should mention.
I'm sorry.
We should mention that we worked together at Games Workshop.
Yes, we both worked at Games Workshop at the same time, but in different shops.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and at that same time, part of their thing was you had to have an army. The shop. This part of the 60% off discount was the shop said, yeah, here's your 60% off discount, but you got to build an army and you got to paint it.
You got to play the games. I don't care if you hate Lord of the Rings. Build an army.
That's
play
right.
Lord of the Rings.
I remember that very clearly.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people having to be forced to build Lord of the Rings army. Whereas when I got hired, I had full armies already.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that edition, it was too much too fast, and I think it was meant to really rope people in. And that was during the time where they had started their sales pitch, where it was like, in fact, to be honest, when we got our job there, the behind the scenes was the store manager said, look, when you're selling this, the number one person you're selling it to is a 14-year-old boy to his mom. And all of our sales happen within the first 6 months of him buying, and then we don't care anymore. We don't care about the people who come into the shop and play. And I was told that verbatim.
Right.
We don't care about those people. We care about that first hit.
Right.
And so we were also told, don't sell to a 10-year-old. Don't, because what'll happen is when a 10-year-old reaches 14, he'll think of Warhammer as that thing he did as a kid, and he won't want to play anymore. And then we'll lose those ongoing sales.
Right.
So it was hooking these 14-year-old kids and their moms. And, that was just... that I think that third edition kind of was part of that. It was kind of that, like, we're going to make this way easier, way more basic. And you know what I thought? I thought, you sons of guns, I got 40 blood claws that I built in front of me, and not one of them is legal anymore.
Right.
You know, I got 10 with power claws and power,
right.
you know, chain swords, and 10 of them had double flame pistols, and all
right.
of that was gone. And I took all my crap and I gave it to my friend, and I just didn't play again until 8th edition.
Yeah, it was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard. 3rd edition was very hard on me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it took my Space Wolf army. I had a Space Wolf army too.
Right.
Took mine and made it, you know, virtually illegal.
Yeah.
I lost all my blood claws.
Yeah, my blood claws were the ones. That
And
was
half my Grey Hunters were illegal too.
Yeah. Also, my Eldar army was starting to age, and I felt like they started to replace models, and they were replacing them badly. And the second round of Aspect Warriors were not sculpted by Jess Goodwin.
Bad.
You know, they weren't terrible, but they were not great anymore, and I didn't want to continue. So there were so many reasons. But yeah, the change of the game was really what stopped me from playing, and that change kind of, I saw it happening everywhere.
Right.
And so by the
another example. I mean, I was playing Warzone at the end of the 90s as well.
Right.
And the second edition of Warzone came out, same thing happened. They wanted you to play bigger armies, more models.
Right.
They changed the basic, you know, way you did things, and I wasn't a fan of that either.
Yep.
So, you know, sometimes you can just get stuck into this is what you're doing. But, you know, we'd done it for a decade.
Right.
We'd played these games, these very immersive, almost tabletop role-playing games.
Right.
You know, and then this major change, let's have an army.
Yeah. And not in a superficial time of our lives either. A really, really big change. Like, I started when I was 16, and by 24, I was deep into 2nd edition, and that was a huge chunk of my developmental gaming life.
Totally.
You know, I'm going to take a really, really quick side note, and that's I looked up how the human brain works, and I kind of talked to you about wanting to look that up. How do our brains work so that, you know, you have old beardy grognards and you have young people saying, you know, the future is now, old man, which is what my daughter told me yesterday.
Oh, geez.
And so, you know, how do our brains work? It turns out that between 12 years old and 24, we have the biggest kind of expansion of taking stuff in and setting experiences and memories, and music, especially. Music is huge, and you are a really good example of that. Yeah.
Not me. Not me stuck in the 80s, what? Early 90s, what?
That becomes our formative years. And once someone hits around 30, their brain has changed, and you stop taking in new information and putting this importance on it, and you start running off of old stuff. And it's literally a dopamine hit to go back and listen to a song that has meaning for you from the 80s. And you know, don't tell me, man. I listen to 80s stations all the time at work.
Yeah.
Everybody, I don't know if everybody hates it, but for me, it's that dopamine hit of those good times.
It's the nostalgia,
right? And that's how gaming is.
Let me tell you,
too.
I am riding a nostalgia high. Since my dad passed, nostalgia it does so much more for me now, because all that same music is now music that I can remember listening to with my dad when we were painting models, or building that castle when we're chiseling out all the different bricks.
Mm-hmm.
We had all that 80s music playing, you know, in the top 40 stations and stuff.
Yeah,
it was all there. So for me, it's even gotten worse.
Yeah. That was back when the pop genre was more than one kind of music. It was all kinds of music.
They even had country crossing into pop, and I mean, that's how I got to know, you know, things like guys like Ronnie Millsap and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, these guys were straight up country, but they made a couple of pop songs and they crossed the funny. Right. Sorry, listen to me segue. Now we're talking about music.
Yeah, no, but it's important. It's important because That's the way our brains work. So when you and I start talking about old ways that we're gaming, I don't want to be like the new way sucks. Definitely the new way is harder for me to grasp because of my brain,
Right.
What are you going to do? But we're also having those great memories. And here's the deal. If I could get a youngster today, and I call it a youngster like I'm old, if I could get a 16-year-old today to be totally into gaming, like he sees miniatures and goes, oh, that's cool. And I taught him how to play with giant armies of Hittites, or I taught him to play with, Wehrmacht. This kid would grow up with the exact same experiences we did. It's not like he's DNA changed.
Right.
Kind of like Dan Carlin, a really good, our historian that we like to listen to. He says, if you take somebody from now and you put them 2,000 years ago and they were raised then, they would probably really enjoy watching public executions. You can't put, the current mindset on someone. And I think the same goes for a kid playing these games. So I think when you have older people like us, you can actually take kids and introduce them to a crunchier game early on and pull them out of this kind of current, very, impersonal, competitive store gaming atmosphere.
Well, I have news for you, buddy. We're going to test that theory. My nephew's just getting ready to turn 15.
That's right.
And, he really enjoyed watching us. He came home, later when we were playing, but he really enjoyed watching the end of that game. Right. So I think he's getting more hooked than he wants to admit, and I love it.
Yeah.
Because he can't wait till the next time you come up. He wants to play with me.
Yeah.
And us play against you, and he wants to really learn how to play.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to totally test that out.
Right. And so here's the thing: we're not going to say there's 10 times as many gamers for miniatures games now than there was when we were kids. We're not going to turn 10 times as many people to playing this way. But I think that the people that didn't want to play back in the 80s because it was too advanced, maybe they're playing now.
Right.
There were still those people that did want to play, that liked the crunch, and they're still out there. So it doesn't hurt to try to find someone to play narratively, to have garage games with, and to bring into that kind of play style.
Right, which is my play style. All you guys that are my friends, we come over, we play these big games, and we play narratively. Right. None of us, I don't think any of us really cared that much about winning. We just like getting together, having some laughs, and rolling dice.
Yeah, it's a good game when you lose and you've had fun.
Oh yeah, the total blast.
Yep. So where were we?
I think we're starting to talk about how more abstraction started slipping in.
Right, how it started slipping in. So, it started with the sales, I think, and getting more people in, and that's great, because it means more sales and more people playing mean that we have more options.
Oh, exactly.
We're not just stuck buying Old Glory and having it shipped for 4 weeks to us so that we can play Civil War games. Although that sounds fun.
Oh yeah, I love me some Civil War gaming. Some of my formative time in the 80s was playing as the South in the Civil War.
Right. Abstractions, I've got kind of some listed, like what the differences have become. Complex systems of comparing stats. A really good example would just be regular old Warhammer games from the past, where you have ballistic skill is just a straight flat roll, and yet strength versus toughness is a compared roll. Some older games, second edition, had some initiative rolls, things like that, where the two people are kind of playing off of these stats on each other. And an abstraction of that would be Age of Sigmar. And Age of Sigmar is, this is how much you need to roll to hit, here's how much you need to roll to wound. Don't bother how tough that other guy is, doesn't matter. You got dice, roll this one, tell them what their armor save modifier is, and they roll their armor, and it's over.
Right.
And that's great. It's a great way to streamline a game and have a great game and have a fast game. But what do we lose? What do we start losing when something doesn't make sense anymore?
Right.
And that's a lot of games now. There's some stuff in it. It just, doesn't make sense. I don't understand this. I guess a way to say it would be, you've got some people in the army that have a save when they're in cover, and some people in the army that have a better chance of hitting. And then you have some other people that are just like the second group that have some other effect. And you're like, well, how come they also don't have a better chance of hitting? They have the same equipment or the same training. And you realize it's because they're not supposed to be a simulation of troops that all know the same thing. They're supposed to be game pieces, playing pieces.
Right.
And what causes that? What causes that kind of abstraction? And there's a few different causes. One would be, let's call it Fantasy Flight. Fantasy Flight is a board game manufacturer, and they love their pieces. If there's a person listening who's played Fantasy Flight games who thinks I'm wrong, they need to rethink their life. Fantasy Flight loves chits. There's way too many of them. The setup is amazingly long for these games, and it really detracts for me. Right? They love their components. And now, they've said, let's make a miniatures game. But the problem is miniatures games are, they're simulations. And these guys are like, we're going to have these tokens, and we're going to have these abstract rules. These guys are going to have this. Tell me why a snowtrooper moves 66% as far as a regular stormtrooper. For reals, tell me why. There is no reason why.
Right. Yeah.
They want to make them different. Why does, why do snowtroopers have the ability to shoot for free when they move? Or there's a lot of whys, and when you start asking why, you start realizing, we're moving away from simulation. We're suspending disbelief, I guess, to have fun playing this game, which is great because it's thematic.
Right, and it is thematic, and we did have fun.
Yeah,
but I get what you're saying. Yeah, it makes what you're saying makes sense to me.
Right,
makes sense to my brain.
So, do we go back and we play our old games? That's another thing I wanted to touch on. People love living games. They love games that are active now.
Right.
I think that if Age of Sigmar had never happened and they had stopped Warhammer, people would still be playing Warhammer. But I think because Age of Sigmar exists, a lot of people that were playing Warhammer feel like they're not going to play it anymore because it's dead, and the current version is so much different. You and I are still playing Space Hulk, right?
Oh yeah,
it's not
anytime I get a chance.
Yeah, there's not
or
a current
Battlefleet
version.
Gothic.
Battlefleet Gothic. We're still playing Battlefleet Gothic. People are playing games that have been discontinued for a long time because that's the game. It's almost become a board game. It's something on your shelf that you can take off and you can play. But if 8th edition comes out, I'm not allowed to play 2nd edition anymore. Who am I going to find to play with?
Right.
I could, right? But the thought is, no, the game now is just kind of a weird psychology. The game now is this, so this is what we're going to do, and nobody wants to play your old game because you are old and new things are good and old things are bad. Old people suck. Young people are great.
Yeah, it is a bizarre thing in people's minds to think, oh, well, there's a new edition, so nobody's going to play the old edition anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it's never stopped me.
Right.
Because during that whole time that everybody was playing 3rd edition, I was still playing 2nd edition with most of my friends.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. That's amazing. I wish I could have convinced my friends to, play 2nd edition. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe when 3rd edition came out, I was just like everyone else, and I said, oh, well, I guess I'm never playing again because, the old edition's gone. It's dead. So,
it never stopped my. I think part of that though is my upbringing. A new edition never stopped my dad from playing an older game if he thought it was a better version of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the new X-Wing is kind of like that for me. I'm going to play the original X-Wing. There's no reason to play the new X-Wing. That brings up another topic. We're kind of starting to drift into the territory of talking about competitive gaming versus narrative gaming, and what it does when a game company, and Games Workshop for the early 2000s is one of these companies, what it does when a game company decides that they're going to change the game a lot, very quickly, very often, just for the people that are playing competitively and their issues.
Right.
Star Wars is a great example. It's a really good example because I hear about, I say, okay, I'm trying to build this force. Hey, what do you guys think about Commandos? And the first thing I hear from people is, oh, they're really great snipers, sniper spam. And I as soon as I hear the word spam, I go, oh, there's meta going on here. And so sniper spam, this hasn't happened, but an example would be snipers are so good that we're going to double their points so that people stop using 3 snipers in a tournament force, and because Darth Vader dying in the first turn is no fun. And
well, it is no fun.
Right, it's no fun. And you and I are narrative gamers, and we start playing the game, and I'm looking at the rules, and I'm like, why the heck is a sniper 400 points out of 800? Why is it so expensive? And I'll never know, and it starts to tell me I would never take that model because I'm not thinking in terms of the meta, or I'm not looking at synergies that other competitive players are looking at. And it starts to affect how normal, narrative gamers are playing. And that company philosophy, Games Workshop was terrible. Do you remember the early 2000s where they were just like changing like entire armies over and over and over again with errata and new books because someone would come out with a winning, tournament force. I think another thing that drives this whole thing is the communication age, and it's our internet. Before the internet, it was word of mouth. Right. Sometimes someone would write something in a magazine, but now, remember when Age of Sigmar first came out and they didn't have any official tournaments yet, and it was this South Coast something or another in England?
South Coast GT in the UK.
Right? And the guy who won was using a goblin giant spider and some other monster from some other thing, because back then you could just do whatever you wanted. Right. And he was using a giant this and a giant this and a giant this, and a week later GW had those 3 models as a bundle on their site for sale, right?
Right.
That's instantaneous. Now everybody is buying this thing because they want to win. And being apprised instantly of what the winning combo is takes a huge amount of trial and error out of playing, and trial and error is what causes people to have fun games.
Right. The average person, I think.
The average
person. Yeah.
That's right.
Some people want the auto win button.
Hey, I got a full disclosure. I did, after we were brainstorming Darth Vader needing a little bit more protection, I did actually just buy the box of Imperial Guard.
Of course you did.
Yes, they are going to be walking. They're going to be walking out in front of Vader, taking hits for him. They're not weak themselves. They're like buzzsaws, and I'm going to see if that's fun to play because I don't know. Just maybe it's the old 2nd edition Eldar player in me. Right. Back in 2nd edition Eldar, I stomped the heck out of my friends. I mean, I used to destroy them, and it never bothered me at all, ever, to destroy my friends in a game. Just it was terrible. And it was terrible. I never rubbed it in, but I took glee, and I get it. I get that hit when you're like winning and you're just dominating. And so what happened was, back in the earlier 2000s when I started playing again, I remembered that, and I started handicapping myself with every game I ever played. I would never take the big name character, and I wouldn't take the gnarly, this is going to kill everything unit choice. And I started handicapping myself because I wanted to play a fun game that was narrative and everybody had a chance. And you probably know what happens. I lost every game I played.
Yeah, just I was going to say you lost a lot, didn't you?
I lost a lot. And so hopefully this change in our game, our really fun game where I lost, gives me the excuse to go ahead and get a slightly better unit and try something a little bit different.
Hey, dude, that's fine. I got plenty to shoot at them, so it's okay.
So let me take a look at my notes. The psychology of gamers. Just the scene was changed by the tournament, and how long we're supposed to be playing with each other. In the good old days, it just was different. And so how do we find a medium ground? Like, how do we bring the narrative style of gaming to now? I guess we're going to have to invite people over to our garages, and that's a little weird. that can get weird.
It is weird. You see, my general policy is when I meet somebody new, I'll play with them. I'll schedule to play with them. Like if I meet somebody on Facebook or Twitter, right. I'll schedule to play with them in one of the local shops a few times. Because you have to vet these people before you just invite a stranger into your house.
Right.
But, then, once you get to know them, if they're, not a total crazy.
That's right.
You invite them over, and you invite them over with all the guys, and you let them get to know everybody, and then you go from there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not precious few, but there are a few people in my life now that have the availability. And, good friend of mine, Jody, who's been on a couple of their podcasts and is local here to Santa Cruz. You know him from online if you haven't met him. Friend of Brian, who's also local here. These guys have lives. They have children. Right. They have jobs. Brian's a new father twice over, and I just can't go over to their houses and play, and I can't, have them come over whenever I want. Because we all have our own stuff going on, and it's so hard to schedule. So what I'm really looking forward to? So I'm looking forward to where we're all in our 50s and our kids are out of the house.
Right.
Like it's the new, it's this dark era of this 30-year-old to this 40-something-year-old where your children are growing up. My youngest is now 15.
Right.
And they're self-sufficient, and they don't need me to feed them and tuck them in. So I'm starting to get freedom to go back to gaming.
Right.
And hopefully in a few years we'll all be of the age where we can get back into it.
Oh yeah, totally. I just wish we lived about a half an hour closer to each other.
Oh my God, yeah.
It would be insane.
It would be great. we live just about 2 hours away.
Yeah, it's about that.
It's a pretty drive, and I used to drive that a lot, so it's not terrible. But at the end of the day, our 5-hour game becomes a 9-hour game, essentially.
Right. So, yeah, unfortunately, we don't get to game as much as we'd like.
That's right. So, what did we think about Legion?
I liked it a lot. There are a lot of tokens.
Yeah.
When you crack open a game and you take one of those Plano organizer boxes, and it's an 18 slot organizer box, and you take out the tokens, and you filled 15 of the slots with individual tokens. Each token having its own slot. That's a lot of tokens.
And then you get a new guy, and he comes with 3 new types of tokens because it's a new guy.
Right. So yes, some models come with new tokens. Yeah. And now they're adding more tokens to the game.
Oh, what are they going to be?
They're gonna. I don't know. I noticed there was a new type of token on one of the Clone Wars things.
I'm sure.
So, I don't know if it's for the clones or for the clankers, but somebody's got a new token.
I was thinking beginning on good notes. I was thinking to myself, let's start with the vegetables and get that out of the way, but I don't want people to think that we didn't like the game and to start with all the stuff that we had issues with might feel that way.
Right. Oh yeah, because disclaimer, we had an absolute blast.
Absolute blast.
There's no two ways about it. We laughed. We
cried.
We cried. We cheered when silly crap happened. I mean, it was awesome. We had a lot of fun playing this game. And some crazy things happened. Some crazy dice rolls, and it was just awesome.
Oh yeah. Darth Vader. I think Darth Vader rolled 5 saves at least 2 turns in a row, if not 3, with one wound left.
5 saves.
Yeah.
Twice in a row, because I got the double attack with the Son of Skywalker card.
That's right.
And my goodness.
The only thing and that ATST is what took me out, and I hated those things before the game, and I hate them double now.
Yeah, that ATRT did some work.
ATRT, yeah, the ATRT, not ATST. That probably would have killed me too.
Well, that would have killed you too, but that would have been, blue on blue.
That's right.
And we're trying themey narrative stuff.
Yeah. So I thought it was super highly thematic.
Oh, very much so.
Very much so.
Luke and Leia both felt like Luke and Leia, and Vader was a beast.
Yeah. And characters, how do you feel about characters?
I like the characters. They feel like who they should be.
Right.
Like when Boba Fett jumped over and flamed those Wookiees.
That's right.
When he jumped over and flamed those Wookiees, that was something else.
Right. And another depth to the characters is you can take their orders cards.
Right. Their command cards. Yeah.
The command cards. And not only are you using it for the overall command and your initiative for the turn, they also have special abilities. Vader had that one where he set it off and gave everybody within range 2 3 suppression tokens, which, had you rolled poorly, would have routed a couple of your units.
Oh, that was absolutely brutal, and it took me 2 turns to recover from that.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you threw so much suppression at it one time.
Mm-hmm. And I thought
then units got shot on top of it.
They were great. They feel great. The characters do. They're not unkillable, but you can't gack them on turn 2. You know what I mean? They're gonna last a little bit. They're gonna be there. You can get lucky, as we played. My buddy and I played in our first game. You can get lucky. I had Han Solo die to a flurry of rifle butts from a bunch of stormtroopers.
I mean, it can happen.
Yeah, it can happen in close combat, especially. But there's some staying power to these guys, and at the same time, they're not unkillable, and I love that. I do think Darth Vader is kind of halfway to Hero Hammer. He's a force unto himself. He's literally the spearhead of my army. He's the Alexander the Great at the front of the horses, and he himself can basically. I think he can control the army. He can be the spear point of the army if he can just survive. So,
Vader or Palpatine, both, I think, can pull that off. Now, on the other hand, the Rebels are getting Operative Luke very soon, which is a second version of Luke. He's a full-on Jedi this time.
Right.
He's not Empire Strikes Back Luke. He is full-on Return of the Jedi Luke. And he looks beastly from the previews that we've gotten so far.
Right.
He looks beastly. So I think that the Rebellion is going to be able to pull some of those shenanigans that Darth or the Emperor can pull very soon here.
It's really inexpensive to buy into the game. That's another great point.
Yeah, this game is, I can't believe for, let's say 125 US, you've got a full-on 800-point army.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to do, and once you play, you realize you probably have good troops. It's not necessary to have all the best toys.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah. Little bit of scale creep. Not scale creep. A little bit of power creep. I think just recently, we'll get to that in the negative points, but
right.
Yeah, the beginning clutch of miniatures out in the first year. Really nice, really balanced. I think you could get away with playing the basic stuff, and I think that makes it so much more accessible to new people. And the
balance of my army, was from starter sets.
Right. Yeah, mine too.
I had 2 models that weren't from the starter sets: Leia and the Chewie and the Wookiees. Everything else is from starter set models. So the basic core troopers, they still work great.
Yep. Yeah, and. Another aspect of the starter boxes and the price is how easy it is to put together. So maybe somebody who's a little bit trepidatious because they're not into putting together models. These models are 2 pieces. Their arms and their weapon are 1 piece. You slot them into the body, you're ready to go. All you need to do is glue them onto their base.
Right, exactly. Now that we've mentioned the PVC, we're seeing the final releases of PVC models, though.
Right.
They're all going to hard plastic, starting with the B-1 battle droids from the Clone Wars.
Right.
I think the last of the PVC models, are the squad upgrade models. I just watched a Fantasy Flight video where they were talking about the new models coming.
Right.
So I think the last of those easy to build models are going to be out for the end of the year.
Right. I think I read something very similar. I remember reading the description of something recently that has not yet come out, and it said it was soft plastic. It called it soft plastic.
Right. And those, I think, were the squad upgrade boxes.
Right. What's that going to do? I think maybe they're thinking people were going to be willing to put together models anyway, and maybe this was just a really inexpensive way to produce a game in bulk and get people hooked. It's inexpensive, not very expensive models. The detail is really, really good for what they are, and yet, I think I was complaining a little bit about a little bit of roundedness, a little bit of softness.
There is some soft details on some of them, but I still think overall, you give them a good paint job, I think they all look great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the swap to hard plastic for the future, I think that's going to be great for the game, because I know a lot of people who are like hardcore 40K fans who won't play the game because of the PVC soft plastic. They just won't touch it. But since the announcement of those B1 battle droids, I know a lot of my friends on Twitter that have been talking about, oh yeah, I'm in. Hard plastic models, I'm in. So it does make a difference to some people.
No, it does. And a good example is, the Stormtrooper say box comes with 7 Stormtroopers. One's a heavy, like a bazooka guy. I will never use that guy. I don't care who says what. Right? And then you have 6 left, and then you get enough troopers, and you start going, gosh, if that 7th guy wasn't just that dude, if he was just a bunch of sprue pieces, I could make another 4-man group.
Right.
But instead, I have what I air quotes wasted miniatures sitting off to the side that I'm never going to use. And honestly, I can't even sell them to somebody else, because if they've got snow troopers, they've already got a flamethrower guy, and that's as many as they can have.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So yeah, this is going to be good for us, modelers.
Oh, amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to that. That's what I'm looking forward to, is the modeling aspects in Star Wars. I don't know how that's going to affect their tournament play, but I'm all for it.
Right.
Because right now, there's a model in the squad that is a commander, and he's the only model that, competitive play-wise, can be the commander for that unit.
Right.
So there are some limitations in the gameplay itself, just due to the models.
Right.
It'll be great to be able to customize your leader and have him be something special.
Another good point, that troops are dangerous. Troops, we get used to older games, at least of 40K, where you have rolls to hit and then rolls to wound and then armor saves. And by the time you get to the end, you got a 10-man Marine squadron who's doing 1 wound to orcs, and it just feels like, God, is anything ever going to happen here? And yeah, in this game, your first opening volley, I think killed 3 of my 6 snow troopers.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah,
that's the thing, that the troops tax in this game isn't a tax. Yes, you have to take troops, but you know what? They're not bad. It's not like a lot of these other games where, oh, that's the tax you have to pay to play the army.
Right.
No, these guys are good.
Right.
Every model in this game is dangerous to every other model.
Yep. And then there are some synergies that make using them even better. General Veers, full disclosure too, General Veers is on his way.
Of course he is.
Yeah, I love the Imperial Commander, and she was great, but General Veers is just a way better version of her, and he gets to put aim tokens on 2 different units of troopers, and it's that's a no-brainer.
Doesn't he get to throw in a bombardment with a card too?
I did not look at his command cards.
Yeah, I think he gets to do a bombardment similar to what Leia gets to do.
Well, he's going to do it then.
It's different, but yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. So the troops are dangerous. The dice rolling pays off, unlike some games or some older games. Highly modifiable with its cards. This game is amazingly modifiable, and anybody who's ever felt that allure for Magic the Gathering, which I don't play normally, but deck building where you're like, oh, will this work or will this work, and what are the benefits of this? They have the cards for adding equipment. Do I want to say have these guys be immune to moving through rough terrain? What are the possibilities I could do with that? If I do that, suddenly the bonus to aim makes a lot more sense than the bonus to dodge. And
exactly.
Right. And you start changing the rules of your miniatures based off of the gear that they could have.
Yeah, totally. They very highly customizable. Over the years, I've gotten to where I like these cards in games.
I do too.
When they first started doing them, and I can't remember some of the games that I played a while back. I think it was like Legend of the Five Rings, one of the like samurai games.
Right.
They had a lot of cards in there, and I was like, this is getting too card gamey. I'm now into it. I kind of like you can kind of build this deck and get these special abilities. I kind of like the extra added bonus that you get with the cards.
Right. And it takes away dice rolls. Sometimes cards take the place of dice rolls and looking at a chart. In fact, some card game or some miniatures games that have card draws are just that. Rather than rolling on some chart, you're just pulling a card, reading it. It's accessible. It's there. Cards take up very little room, and they're very easy to store.
Exactly. It's a neat mechanic. I'm fully on board with it.
Yeah. Do you have any other points that you just loved about the game?
Close combat's brutal.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that. Melee is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just get 5 mooks in there with their rifle buttons.
Right.
Melee is brutal, which is cool because most of the time you're trying to avoid melee, but sometimes you just can't help. You got to tie Darth Vader down.
Yeah.
And granted, he can chop down 5 guys in one swing.
Oh yeah, he did. I think who was it? You had 4 guys left, and he
got all 4 of them one swing.
Yeah, he just pirouetted and killed all of them.
But sometimes you got to tie him up just for that one turn, keep him out of position.
And getting out of close combat in this game is not easy. So what'll happen is you have your 2 actions, and you use 1 action to move into close combat, hopefully, and 1 action to attack, and then your enemy will use 1 action to attack because they're not going to leave close combat.
Right, and because if you leave close combat, you lose all other actions. The only thing you can do is that at close combat.
And 1 move. And so, for instance, I was in close combat with Han Solo against all these stormtroopers, and I'm in this situation where I say, okay, if I move with Han first, they're just going to move back into contact with me and attack me. So I have to let them attack and hope to live, and then move, and then the next turn move Han first so that he can get completely away.
Right. Exactly.
Or send someone else in to close combat with them so Han can bail without them chasing him down.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard to work close combat if you are 6-man on 6-man mooks. Fine, go ahead and roll dice all day long in close combat. But if you're Wookiees against mooks or mooks against 1 hero, not super great for the lesser.
Yeah, because Boba Fett angered those Wookiees, and the other 2 ran in and did swat it.
Oh yeah, he died, and they took back those scalps.
Yeah, totally. That was a great moment. That was awesome. Okay, I'm gonna flame you. Okay, I'm gonna charge you.
Another great thing about the game is the size of the board. Now, officially, they say the size of the board should be 6 feet across. That's for various reasons, including competitive play, maybe. And we found
6 feet long, right?
6 feet across, long. Right?
Yeah, long, and then 3 feet across.
3 feet across. And of course, me as an older gamer, I immediately go, 3 feet. No, it's got to be 4 feet. It has to be 4 feet. And the reality is, all they're doing is taking away the 1 whole turn that you just walk toward each other and let your guy with the longest range weapon have a field day.
The 1 turn nobody gets to shoot.
Right.
That's all they're taking off by shortening the table.
And what did we feel about narrowing it? And what did we feel about the width of the table?
We used half the ping pong table, so we used 4.5 feet instead of 6. I thought 4.5 feet was fine.
And the game that I played right before your game, we played on 6, and we started on corners, and we had to quit the game at round 3 because I had to go home, and it had become 9:30 at night, and I just felt 6 feet is not necessary. And the person I played against, my friend Trevor, thought the same thing. He thinks that probably 4x3 or 4x4 is probably a much better size.
Yeah, I don't think we need 6 feet. Not at 800 points.
Definitely not.
We didn't feel crowded. I didn't feel like our units were crowded at all. We could have run the flanks if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no point to.
Right.
With the mission that we had. But, I mean, we could have flanked. There was plenty of room to put. We could have put 2 or 3 more units. At least 2 units on each side without feeling cluttered.
Right. And the problem with 800 points is if we had played 6 feet, we would have psychologically felt like we had to fill it up. And we would have. I would have had speeder bikes way out on one side. I would have had, whoever way out on the other side. And you would have had people way out on the sides. Yeah. And what it would have turned into would have been 3 separate battles rather than having everybody close enough to start supporting each other once they had taken out their enemy.
You know what the end of the game would have been if we'd played on 6 feet? It would have been units running, trying to get into range to shoot.
And that's how my other game ended too. Just units just trying to run to get into range.
Yeah, because the way that we played it with it being 4.5 foot, I mean, I think there was one turn where we each ended up moving a unit and they didn't get to shoot that turn. Because they had to double move. Right. And those were the 2 units that were on the most extreme flanks of the table.
And that means that during that game, all the units we had on the board were part of the overall strategy of the battle rather than just being a flank and being lost.
Exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. They played the entire game. They played a purpose in the entire game.
Right.
They shot at each other, they ducked and covered, they threw grenades. I mean, it was just I had a lot of fun with this game. It felt very Star Wars-y.
Right.
I think the command cards really helped the heroes be thematic.
Yeah.
I really do.
And not to say that troops don't also have their own abilities and their own.
Oh yeah, their own abilities, like the rebels being able to spend a dodge and gain a dodge.
Right.
I mean, if they put a dodge on themselves, which helps them mitigate damage.
Right.
They automatically get one back. So every time somebody shoots at them, they're dodging and gaining that token back.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really awesome.
Yeah, and they've got their space AK-47s, which far outstrip what the stormtroopers are using.
Yeah.
Their only down point is, T-shirts for armor.
Right. The saving grace of the stormtroopers, on the other hand, is their armor.
That's right.
Their saves. There were turns where I hit a ton of times, did nothing.
Yep. So, do you have any criticisms?
There are just so many tokens. It's just you have to really ride the tokens, and you have to, cleaning them up at the end of every turn, and then which ones stay, which ones go.
Mm-hmm.
It can be tedious. It's just a little tedious. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it hurts gameplay. But for me, it's just maybe it's a lot of tokens.
For me, it sounds silly, but the reason that we paint miniatures is so we can pretend, because as adults, our brains don't work like they did when we were kids, right?
Right.
And we have painted miniatures, and we have a board with terrain, and all this is to suspend disbelief so we can have fun. And having a bunch of tokens on the battlefield, that kind of, I wish they weren't there.
Right. Well, it's like later on in the game, we started stacking our wound tokens for the heroes on their cards instead of on the table.
Right.
Because it kept that giant clutter out of the middle of the table.
That's right.
So that may be something that we might want to try next time, is just stack their tokens on their cards.
Right.
Because we know which unit it goes to which card. So it's not like, it's a shocker.
Right. I think the exception is probably suppression. Suppression makes sense to keep on the table. Tokens on the cards for the most part, I think, is a good idea.
Right.
So my number one criticism is the game manual reads like a tournament rules set, and as I've written here, alienates the narrative gamer.
It does. This game is not set up narrative gamer friendly.
Right.
It's not anti-narrative, but it's definitely not set up for, here, play this really cool scenario. No, let's read these poor stereo instructions.
Stereo instructions, right.
That's what it reminds me of. It's stereo instructions that just keep repeating the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So you do it right.
Every last incident of what could happen in this game is covered in the rules in minutia, and it it's great because you know what to do in any given situation. But when you read it, it's what's behind it is very, very obvious. It is a competitive gamer's game, and this is to be read by two people who are not friends, who are wanting to win, and who will probably use anything that they can against the other person. And that includes complex rules on how to decide who rolls a die that affects both players. You know, whose turn is it? Who had the first turn? First, you got to figure out who had the first turn by determining who has more or fewer points. And then if it's one person or the other person, then you roll a die a certain way, and then one person has to roll the die, so there's no argument about who's rolling the die. Then you get it, and then you find out who takes the first turn. And from that point on, who has the first turn marker, then you roll this die. And then guess what? The die roll is 50-50. When you look at the pips, you're like,
right.
So basically it's decide who gets, say if we both have the same command value on our command card, well, who's going to get to have the advantage this turn? Oh, roll a die. It's 50-50. It's one person or the other person. But it's not that easy. They've got to have a certain person roll it, and they have to have them roll a certain color of dice. Here's another abstraction. They can't just roll a D6 on a 4+.
Right.
That would be easy. They got to roll this one color dice. It's very abstract. It's hard for me to remember. I think it's red.
Yeah,
and then,
I think it's red.
Right, and it's got to be these pips, all of any paint, as you call it, anything that has a face. Otherwise, it's blank. But then you're going, well, what is that? Is that a 50-50? Is that 2 out of 4? And there's so many other instances where you're trying to ignore the surge marker and just look for the normal explosion markers.
Right, exactly.
And it's so
very confusing when you first start rolling dice.
Right.
Between the surges and the criticals and just the hits.
And it's all meant to keep everything on the up and up between players who aren't friends.
Right.
And we were kind of looking at it going, and then keywords, of course, it's a whole nother subject, but keywords are another thing that I find not as great about the game. Here's a keyword that says, this person has sharpshooter. And you're like, okay, what does sharpshooter do? Okay, sharpshooter does this. And you know what? Why doesn't the card say, shoot at the person, -1 cover? That's all it's got to say. Shoot at them, -1 cover. But instead, there's a keyword where I have to go look up the keyword in the book. I got to hope that the keyword
they could have put a
been...
sentence of text on the card.
Right.
Each unit has their own card.
Right.
I don't see keywords needing to be a thing. Just write it on the card.
Yeah, and the point of a card is so that you don't need to go look things up.
You need to reference the rules.
Right.
That's what I think a card should be for. If you have a unit card, you shouldn't need to be referencing the rules. All the pertinent gameplay information should be on that card.
Right.
I agree. That is another criticism I would have.
Yeah, and the stack of not the stack, but the order of operations for where you're, you declare a defender, and then you make your dice pool, and then you roll it, and now you can affect your dice pool, and now the player who's defending can affect the dice pool, and then you apply the hits, and then the defender can, affect that. And it's that, it's very, very clear, but is that a little bit too complex? I like the idea of just saying, hey, I rolled 5 dice, you have a -1 save, that person rolls their thing and says, that sucks, I'm going to use my dodge instead,
Right.
But yeah, that kind of complexity. Yeah, I get it. And you know what? Now that we played 2-3 games, it's not a big deal. And I feel like I'm the jerk for complaining.
At first, it just feels odd.
Yeah.
Getting used to these special dice,
special symbols, trying to figure out which one's
so much
the dodge.
of a board game thing.
Yeah.
Most other games just use, okay, take a 6-sided die, take a D10, or take a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the special dice, it is such a FFG board gamer kind of thing. And I don't begrudge them for it. I get it. Because then you sell dice.
Yeah, you sell dice. I bought some.
Yeah, you sell dice on top of it.
Though, we've been counting to 10 since we were little kids. And I haven't been counting the surges on 8-siders ever. And my eyesight's not that great. We had to wear glasses because it's a little bit dark, and we're in our late 40s, and we're rolling, and I'm like, from 2 feet away, that surge looks like, I don't know, is that a crit? There's a lot of squinting.
I get it. Yeah.
What else did you...
But that's just being old.
Yeah.
That's our fault. We've gotten old.
That's my biggest criticism.
Yeah. I've gotten old, damn it.
What's something else?
Oh, I don't.
My last bullet point, I think, is good. That's the actions. So, in a normal game, I can move and shoot, or I can move double, or I can hold still and shoot even better, right? And I take a little bit of suppression, or I get hit, or there's some kind of minus. And now I can move and shoot, but I'm going to shoot at a minus, and I'm going to move a little bit slower, and so forth, right? I can still do everything I can do, but just worse. But when you have actions, and you go from 2 actions to 1 action because you're suppressed, suddenly you can't shoot if you move.
Right. It's very brutal. It's very brutalizing.
And that's the abstraction where you go, but in real life, you want it to be a simulation. I'm playing with people that have legs and arms, so why can't they use them?
Right. But other people would say, well, because they've got their heads down.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
But the other abstraction that most other games would use, where they get half the rate of fire or a minus, it's the same thing. Their head's still down.
Right.
So I get it. I mean, I understand why they do it. I get it's a way for limiting things. It's a penalty because you're suppressed. But man, it's a brutal in this game.
Right. And for me, I think sometimes it makes or breaks a game. Chain of Command by Two Fat Lardies.
Right.
I played 1 game, and I unfortunately, me and Patrick were playing, and we were like, never again. Right. And part of it was, I'm gonna roll a 6-sided die to see how far these guys move. They're moving, they're moving. It's like, oh, there could be potholes, or they're stumbling through brush or whatever. I'm like, okay, 1 is a lot different than 6 in terms of how far you've moved.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
I love Two Fat Lardies. They do some great games, but man, they use a lot of abstractions.
Right.
A lot of abstractions.
Their jump off points was something else we didn't really, how you put people on the table. Surprise, we weren't here before, but we are now.
Right.
And they're saying, oh, the battlefield isn't flat. It's these guys were hidden in a crevice somewhere.
Right.
Like, I don't know,
They were laying in the ditch next to the road.
Yeah, like surprise. It's like, well, I don't know. I guess so. Maybe it was that day. Maybe we weren't on playing, and maybe we need to give it another try. And maybe something else too, as
maybe
older gamers.
You and I just need to play it.
Dude, not only do we need to play it, we just won't use that rule.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Dude, I am so Mr. You guys have all heard me talk about it. My dad, no rule system survived contact with my dad without house rules. I'm the same way. I have no problem with that. And with my current group of friends, we can make all the house rules we want. We just have to inform everybody this is what we're doing. It's just easy. It's just easy. And I've wanted to try Chain of Command. Some of my Twitter friends have been using it recently, so I wouldn't mind giving it a go. But, then again, bolt action's out there too.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think we're going to give that a go as well.
We are.
We have other ex-GW friends that play bolt action as well, so who knows? Maybe we'll make a day of it.
Yep.
But yeah, I enjoy, despite the few criticisms, I really enjoy the game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is company. You've got to play with the right people.
Yeah.
But that's just how I game. I don't do pickup games at stores anymore. I just don't do it. It's just not how I want to game. I have a finite amount of time to game. So when I game, I want to really enjoy it. So going and doing a pickup game with somebody at a store that's not going to have painted models, or the store is going to have crappy terrain. And I'm not bagging on stores. Some stores have great terrain. But the average game store, you're not looking at great terrain. And, most Jimmy Johns at stores aren't painting their armies.
Uh-huh.
And I say that, and I'm not trying to be mean, it's what I've seen. Right. And I've been to stores just recently, just this last week, to pick up paint. And I was in there, and I think I saw 1 fully painted army out of 6 tables running games.
Right.
And we're talking anything from I saw a game of bolt action with completely unpainted models. That was thrilling. Historical gamers with unpainted models.
They were in black and white.
Yeah. No. They were just gray. They were just all plastic, not even primed. and there was a fully painted Necromunda gang. Well, it's 5 dudes, 10 dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it's fully painted. Of course the other guy was bare plastic. So I don't know.
You and I, obviously you have, if anybody's listened to this podcast, but you and I both, we say we got to play with painted miniatures. And when I played my buddy Trevor with his unpainted stuff, I wanted to play Star Wars again so that we knew the rules, right? Not a big deal.
Right.
But we try to paint our stuff, and there's other people I play with, especially a ongoing tournament of Blitz Bowl, which is the Barnes & Noble Blood Bowl mini game. Right. I have a tournament going on with my friends. You got to have your stuff painted to play.
Yeah.
And it's important. So when you go to the store and you're looking for new people to play with, like say when AOS first came out and you were doing the Fremont store and we were meeting all those people, you're getting a feel for who you want to play with again, maybe meeting new friends. And if someone has a plastic army, it's something that came out 2 days ago, that's great. But if they've got a plastic army of, I don't know, call it orcs, old style orcs, you go, wow, how long have you had these guys? That's kind of this innocuous question you like to ask. Hey, how long have you been playing these guys? Oh man, probably about 2 years. Well, why the hell are they painted?
Yeah, it's horrible. You don't want to come off as a painting snob. No. But the reality is I'm a painting snob. I'll admit it. I want to play with painted models.
Right.
Because it ruins my immersion into the game if things are unpainted.
Right.
I mean, and I never played. Okay, like I've said before, I've played with half-painted models and things like that. But my half-painted model was... The only thing that it would be missing that some other guys would be fully painted with was the basing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking... When I say I used to play with half-painted models, we're talking it was 3/4 of the paint job.
Right.
Minus the basing and, some highlighting. I never played with bare plastic or primered plastic.
Yep.
Yeah, the thought of that, I can't fathom that.
Yeah. And another aspect of painted models is the base.
Yeah.
If you could get a GW model, and if you don't have the base finished, it looks half done. Likewise, you could get a Zenithal highlight on a black model with white, paint, and put it on a fully modeled base with flocking. It looks like it's 3/4 done.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy.
The base is very important, even if it's painted an appropriate color that matches the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll admit it. My Wookiees weren't based. But the paint on their bases matched the...
Not that you could tell.
Yeah, it matched the giant piece of canvas I have that I have airbrushed. The color match was perfect.
I have a fun question. How do you paint your bases and why? And I'm talking about bevel versus top, bevel colored, bevel black. What games are you painting which way and why?
I am a reborn black edge. I think it frames the model. The model. I used to, for years, go with either a Vallejo Russian uniform from World War II.
Ooh, mine was English uniform.
that was my go-to for a while. And then there was English uniform as well, depending on if it was a desert base or a, more, deciduous area.
Right.
Like my European theater Flames War stuff would have the green base edges.
Right.
Whereas my DAC army, my Africa Corps, they have an English uniform edge.
Right.
Yeah, it just depended on what I was doing with the rest of the base. I am fully back into black edges.
Yeah. And I was never, and probably a couple of years ago, again, our friend Brian had, I think, he had some Blood Bowl guys, and I said, you're going to leave the bevels black. And he said, you know what? They're models. They're not real. And his reason for painting them black seemed kind of like, this is just toys anyway, so you might as well make it look good. And I didn't agree with that, but I agreed that it looked hot. Like, it frames the model. And I didn't need the model to blend in with, because what you want is you want it to look just like the terrain, so you could just really just imagine him standing there rather than standing on it. That was
my thought. Right. At first. Now, when the slaughter bases first came out, man, we've just totally drifted off into other topics. But nonetheless, when they first came out, My dad and I were like, well, what do we do with these things? So what we did was we just flocked them down the edge. Mm-hmm. We flocked the whole base.
Exactly.
It was the late 80s, so everything was getting flocked. We weren't sanding things and painting it. We were just using flock. Which is where I put the as a throwback to my dad. That's why I've flocked the tops of the bases of the Star Wars Legion models. It was completely a throwback to my father.
Right.
Because the first set of them that I painted were for my nephew.
Right.
So being as that's how my dad painted my models and we did them, that's what I did with his. Right. But back to what I was saying, we used to just flock the top and edges.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we would do is, Testors makes a brush-on dull coat sealer.
Yeah.
We would take an eyedropper, and we would drop some of that dull coat onto the flock so that it would stick all the way around the base.
Yeah.
And then you just let it dry, and then the flock never comes off.
Yeah, exactly. I had that problem with flock coming off in the early days.
It comes off. Even if you soak it in simple green, it never comes off. I've tried.
Yeah, and I think when we went from flocking the entirety of the base to leaving the bevels painted, and GW set the standard. It used to be Goblin Green, right?
Oh my God, Goblin Green.
Goblin Green, and that was the first step of saying, yeah, this is a model. It's on a base. We're going to give it the same color as what we think you're going to be playing on, but you're never, unless you're going to be that guy with his Napoleonics that have little pins in the bottom of the feet. Right. And you're sticking them into your board, which is made of foam. It's never going to quite look realistic, so don't try. And then Brian showed me these black bubbles, and that was maybe a year and a half ago, and I was born again. And I want to do it that way now for some games. Right. I still do a brown bevel for like mass games, like Age of Sigmar, whole armies. Because the brown is a fantasy color. It's leather, it's dirt, you know. And I think black is a crisper, futuristic color. It's a Star Wars color. It's a Necromunda color. So, yeah, I
fluctuate. Syrians are waving at you with their black bevels right now.
Are they going to stay black?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're going to go into movement tray. Who cares what color they are?
There you go. Are you going to have recessed? Are you having recessed movement trays? Now we're moving into like what's on your desk now, huh?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Are they going to be? It's recessed movement trays or just flat trays?
It'll be similar to what an old GW movement tray. I'll order them from Litco. Right. I'll order them the size that I need for Hail Caesar.
Right.
So they'll be 8 miniatures wide. So what's that? 160.
Yeah. 20 times 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So 160 by 40.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's just what I'll order. And then when I play, when I do play the Warhammer Ancients version, I still have a crap load of the old GW plastics. So I'll just load them up in those. So yeah, they'll be recessed, so the edges of their bases won't even show.
Yeah, it'll be great.
So I haven't decided yet whether I'm gonna. I think I'm just gonna paint the deep edges of the movement tray. I'll just paint them a brown color, a deserty color. I'll sand the very top edge. They have the little rim at the top.
Right.
I'll sand that, but the rest of it'll, that will be painted a brownish color to mask the table.
Right. What I ended up doing was going to Home Depot, and they've got those adhesive linoleum squares for 89 cents. And I got one that looked like some kind of mottled stone, brownish. And you can cut those with scissors. And so I ended up cutting out movement trays with those, gluing a little bit of a lip at the top with various materials. I love to use bamboo skewers for a lot of different things. Because once you put glue and sand on that, you can't really see the shape of it. And I made my own movement trays. They slide across gaming tables on the bottom because they're smooth. And you don't have to paint the inside of the tray or have it scratch because it's already this mottled stone, dirt-looking color. That's something that I did. And
it's not a bad idea. It's probably really cheap compared to ordering... ordering movement trays.
Really cheap. I'll show you next time I come up.
Yeah, definitely. And that we're going to have to do again. We're gonna have to do Star Wars again because the nephew really wants to play Star Wars.
You got it.
But we'll have to do that again, and I want to do some BattleTech and some heavy gear in the near future too.
Right.
I mean, I know we're coming up on the holidays, so things are gonna get kind of crazy. But
yeah, we can find time.
Oh yeah, it's a day here or there,
Yep.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some more gaming in. I've got the Assyrians back on the table. I'm cleaning up a bunch of them right now, so I can get them put on temporary bases so that I can prime them.
Right.
Because most of the rest of the Assyrians are going to be on 2 to 3 model bases.
Right.
And I have a couple of friends on Twitter who painting models already mounted to those 3 model bases. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine doing that.
Maybe 4 abreast, but yeah, people on 4s, because Hail Caesar loves to do that. They love to have 4 models on a 40x40.
Yeah. Well, this guy he's painting models for DBM, so he's putting 3 Roman legionnaires on 1 base.
Abreast?
Abreast.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose, but he's mounting the shields on first, so I'm like, those are big shields. How are you getting in there? And that's my buddy. I want to say it's Mini Painter 85 on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Awesome model. He's painting these awesome looking Romans.
Great.
But yeah, he's painting them on the triple bases. I may mount a couple of Assyrians on dually bases and just see how they paint.
Right.
I mean, I might be able to. If I leave the shields off when I start, I might be able to paint them.
Yeah.
Because in all reality, the things that you're going to be lacking on are things that aren't really visible on the model.
Right.
When they're on the bases anyway.
But just you don't have to be reminded. You're going to end up saying this yourself. You're not going to do it that way. Because we've reached the point now, right? We've taken shortcuts in the past, and now we're at the point gaming where you say, I'm just going to take it. It's going to take for as long as it takes to get it done right.
Right. But at the same time, I'm not going to spend 1 million hours painting a model anymore.
That's right.
That had to stop.
Hey, you know what really works well? This new product called contrast paints. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about it on the internet. Apparently it cures cancer.
Well, apparently it's helping my buddy Steven in Australia paint a lot of his Persians really fast, and they're looking good. I need to link you his Twitter account so you can see.
Good. I think like any paint, I think that if they're not used right, used right, it's not going to be great. And I think people maybe who can't paint or don't have the experience that maybe we do are trying to paint with this stuff and not understanding that it's a tool.
Exactly. And that's what Steven's doing with it. He's using it as a tool to help get those uber colorful Achaemenid. Oh my God! Now I can't say it. Yeah, his Persians.
Yeah.
He's getting them painted, and they're looking fantastic. They really are. And it's just a tool he uses. It's helping him get all those colorful cloth uniforms done.
Right.
And they're just looking great. So, I think next time you and I are going to get together and talk some painting.
Sure.
And contrast will be in there. I've got some here. I'm going to try on the Assyrians.
Right.
Because if it helps speed up the painting of all those kilts and stuff, hey, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because I would like to have that game within the next year.
Yeah. There's a ton of games that we should play in the next few months even.
Well, you and I will have to get together and make a big old list.
That's
right. There are all kinds of things I want to do. I need to dip back into some 4th edition Flames of War, and I painted armies for that, so we can do that at any point in time. Yeah. I know that my buddy Ryan, who worked with us at Games Workshop, he wants to come up, and he hasn't played any 40K since he left Games Workshop.
Wow.
And he'd like to dust up his models and try a game of 8, so I told him we should do that then.
You know what else? We should probably have you and Kevin show me some Team Yankee sweetness.
Yeah. I need to bust out the airbrush and get all those Hind helicopters painted. Yes, we'll definitely do that. So yeah, you and I will definitely have to talk offline on that. But they don't need to hear us brainstorm all this stuff. Although everybody probably enjoy it. had a great conversation with you. I'm so glad you came on and did this with me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a lot of fun.
This, and you guys are definitely going to hear from Chris again. He's one of my go-to gaming buddies. Between him and Kevin, you'll probably get sick of hearing them eventually, but you can't get any more sick of hearing them than sick of hearing me. So it just is what it is. But again, thanks for coming on. We had a great game of Star Wars Legion. I can't wait to have another one.
That's right.
And see what the future holds for other games. I know you're into BattleTech. And I really want to get some of this Heavy Gear stuff painted up, but not the plastics. But we'll talk about those when we actually talk about Heavy Gear.
That's right.
So bad. But
well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So next time, Chris is going to join me again, and we're going to have the painting episode that I mentioned in the first episode of the show. And I'm sure we'll talk about some gaming and other things we've been up to as well. So thanks for joining us on this 5th episode, the first episode that's not actually the history and nothing but nostalgia dripping content. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed recording it. So God willing and the river don't rise, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, may your miniatures be painted, your games epic, and your dice roll hot. So here's another random fact about my dad. He used to think it was hilarious when my brother and I hit our teen years, probably about 14 or so, to think it was funny to run in like a Marine Corps drill instructor with this little metal garbage can he had for our desk in the garage. He'd be pounding it with a metal spoon and screaming at us to get up in the morning on a Saturday morning, dying laughing as we got older and started ignoring him. It was the most miserable thing ever. It was hilarious when he pulled it off when I finally met my buddy Kevin that I'm still friends with, that eventually you'll meet on the show. When he did it to him and my buddy Joe the first time they spent the night on a Saturday. It was hilarious. And he just was so pleased with himself. He just did these silly little things. Gosh, I miss my dad. All right, for sure, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.